Hello, and thanks for joining me tonight. My name is Mike Pellerino. I am going to be your host. Tonight, I got a really special guest with me. Um, it's Jeff Kenny, and he is the CEO of an organization called Hidden Talents. Jeff, why don't we start out with you by introducing yourself and those two young ladies you have with you?
All right, thanks, Mike. So my name is Jeff. I've been running the Hidden Talents program since the mid 1990s, and started off as a kids program and branched off into a lot of volunteer activities. And today, mostly we focus on feeding people on the street, homeless persons, refugees, anyone who comes into our midst. And so I have the young women who are primarily charged with helping me on the weekends. They're twins, juniors at Cristo Rey High School. Andrea, who is on my left, and Alejandra. Um, as I said, they're juniors in high school, do a lot of volunteer work, and have been instrumental in expanding our program.
Ken, I was reading some of your bio that you had sent me. You were working with pregnant teenagers and a lot of young people, sports, spiritual direction groups. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I lost my sight in the early 1980s and went to social work school. I was working in a meatpacking plant, lost my sight in an accident, went to get a degree in social work, and became a therapist. And most of my work at that time, this was in the late 1980s when I got out of social work school, was working with pregnant teenagers. I was doing some work with adoptions and a lot of kids with suicidal ideation, and was realizing that in working with these, whether they're pregnant girls or suicidal teenagers, that they were kind of hopeless and didn't find a lot of meaning in their life. So I decided, instead of just working with them after the fact of having like emotional difficulties, that I would start kids programs to try to prevent kids from ending up in the same situation. So
That's
that,
amazing.
yeah,
Well, you're doing God's work. You really are.
well, thanks.
I mean, it's really a blessing what you're doing. To help our youth today, they need as much guidance and help and spiritual help as well.
Yeah.
So, thank you for what you're doing for them. Um, Tell us, there's a lot of homeless people on the streets today that are going hungry in our country, that are citizens of the United States. Now, but you're helping the immigrants, is that correct? That are homeless?
Yeah, well, lately, that was about July, not this past year, in 22, maybe in July of 2022, suddenly on the streets of Chicago. We had been feeding people for a long time, but then the immigrants started arriving on the streets in the summer, and so our programs changed, which was why it was so helpful to have these two girls, because they spoke Spanish. And I had no way to communicate with the immigrants, but they were suddenly out there, and our needs changed. So instead of just food for people on the street, we needed to get diapers and shoes and clothing, because the immigrants were coming into the city. Some of them had some services provided for them and stayed at pretty good shelters, and some of them were in awful places. So we need to provide things for them. Um, Lately, just in the past, really since the presidency changed, the immigrants, out of fear, are really no longer on the street. So they went from, maybe we could see 40 to 60 immigrants each day on the street, and children, to just a couple of weeks ago I was out with the girls and we didn't see any, and it was directly related to their fear. So most of our work has been with classical kind of homeless people from Chicago, and then over the last year and a half with the immigrants. And right now there's almost none of them out.
How, how do you get the word out to the immigrants that are scared right now to come to you, come back out, and come back to what you do?
There's probably, because realistically, I guess they should fear for deportation. So just because it's been changed in the past 2 weeks, I'm not really sure how we would do that. Most of the shelters in Chicago had closed, I think, this past fall, but they were still out, especially on the weekends. Well, they were out on both Wednesdays and Saturdays when we go out. But now I'm not really sure how we would get word to them. We probably could reach out to them somehow, but I'm not sure because all of our work is done on the street if they're going to be willing to come back out on the streets of Chicago, at least not until they feel like it's safe.
Jeff, aren't most of these immigrants in shelters that they're being provided food for and shelter? I mean,
Well, most of the shelters downtown have closed. I'm not sure if there's any open in the downtown area. Originally, a year and a half ago, there was several of them. There was actually one shelter close to where we deliver a lot of our food, where there was 400 men. There were several other shelters all around the downtown area, but those have closed over the past, I guess, due to funding. Those have closed over the past year, and I'm not sure where they are. But even when they were in shelters, some of the shelters were really good about food. And so some of them were really bad. So a lot of the immigrants would complain that they were given moldy bread and not much to drink. And they were in the shelters, but really not wanted. So it all depended from shelter to shelter. Some were good, some were not good. And so our stuff was pretty desirable to them. Plus we had diapers and breakfast foods that they could sometimes bring in. We had clothing. We had a lot of stuff to serve them. But it was a shelter to shelter basis on whether or not they were being served and treated properly or not.
Jeff, are you in the same location every Wednesday and Sunday or Saturday?
Yeah, primarily on Wednesdays. Today we have a direct route which goes from about where the Wrigley building is north of the river south to up and down Michigan Avenue to a park across from the Harold Washington Library called Pritzker Park. And since the pandemic, we had known that was a place where homeless people would congregate. So since the pandemic, we would go down to Pritzker Park, congregate and meet with a bunch of the homeless people and another small group of volunteers from St. Peter's Church. And we would feed a lot of guys. So feed them on the way there, feed several guys at the park, and then do the same on the way back. So that was our Saturday route, or Wednesday route. On Saturdays, we go north and make a circle from where we are at the river around Holy Name Cathedral down Michigan Avenue, and then come back and then serve the south too. So it's pretty much we go south on Wednesdays and then both north and a little bit south on Saturdays.
Ken, what were these homeless people doing before you took up the cause to go out and really basically save their life?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't give us that much credit. When I was down here for a long time doing counseling, and that's kind of how it started. I had access to some food sources because of my kids program. We would sometimes give them food and snacks and stuff, and Panera was helping us out. So as I was coming home from work downtown, getting to the train station, I would pass the same homeless people month after month, year after year, and got to know some of them. And I decided, instead of just getting to know them and talk to them and maybe getting them something from McDonald's on my own, that I had the resources where I would start feeding them. So slowly, starting in 2007, I would use kids in our programs and bring them down on the weekends and start feeding the people I had already known and had met on my own. So it just really expanded from there. And then when COVID hit and all the offices closed downtown, I realized that there was nobody that was going to be out here feeding people or giving them change or buying streetwise. So I started to come down here during COVID, and there was really no one on the streets, really almost no cars, no buses. We could have walked down State Street with our wagon, and people were also feeling really generous. I think during COVID, a lot of people wanted something to do. So different restaurants and stores would give us and offer us donations. Other people were offering us food and clothing because they knew that I was coming down here. So that's when we really expanded. We went from feeding maybe 30, 40 people a week to feeding probably 150.
Wow.
So we needed a lot of donations, but when all the people moved out of the offices downtown, a lot of the homeless people moved into downtown because they could congregate together. Um, so we, it expanded greatly. There was almost no workers on the street, no working people on the street, no working people in the offices. And so the homeless people came downtown. So it was basically, I'm sure there was some other groups, but it's basically, it felt like it was just us and the homeless people.
That's amazing. Since they're coming out with the deportation now of all the immigrants, how's that affecting what you're trying to do? Do you see the number of your people, the people that you're helping, you see that number dwindling?
Yes, directly. All of the, especially Venezuelan, Colombian immigrants from South America that were out here, um, are no longer here. Andrea, do you want to say something about that?
I think like a lot of the families that we used to feed, they're no longer here. Like the children we would see every weekend, they're no longer out here. And like I think the children were a big part of like what we do because we would keep them smiling. We would give them coloring books with crayons every week. Or for like Easter, we had an Easter egg hunt outside of the condo out here. A Christmas party for the children.
Yeah, so we were getting to know the immigrants pretty well and some of their families. And they would be around for 3 or 4 months because that's when they would have the housing and the shelters and then would kind of run out. So we would spend usually Wednesdays and Saturdays with these people, at least getting to know them, feed them, getting to know their kids. There was at one point, there was a girl in a wheelchair who was having a real difficult time, and we were able to get a wheelchair for her. As Andrea said, we were acquiring coloring books. For Christmas, we had the first Christmas party with authentic Venezuelan food.
Really?
We had the girls dress up as elves. We had a Santa Claus. It was really great, and we were establishing really wonderful relationships and trusting relationships with these families. And now they're gone, and I guess the only way to put it is they're in hiding, and I'm not sure how long that's going to last.
It's amazing. How do you get funded for this? It's to feed 150 people in a week. That's got to cost a small fortune. How are you funded for this?
Well, originally, when it was a small program before COVID, it was mainly just out of resources my wife and I had. And then, as I said before, when COVID hit, there was so many places who were incredibly generous that we didn't know about. So there's a bakery on the south side that started giving us, 2 bakeries that started giving us all the bread and donuts we wanted. There was an Italian delicatessen on the south side, Calabria, who suddenly became very generous. Once in a while, our alderman would give us some donations. He was giving us masks. So I think, as I said, people had wanted something to do and to find some meaning in their life. And we would then go from one donor to the next. A couple of deacons from the Catholic Church built us a cart. Actually, out of a confessional, built us a cart so that we could store more and more lunches. So instead of carrying bags, we had this cart. They brought us some hot and warm coolers so we could do soup and hot chocolate in the winter, which we've continued to do. So it just kind of, people would hear about us and refer us to other people. And so suddenly our basement and our garage turned into storage areas. So we didn't, financially, it never really got to be that much of a burden because we were able to get to donations. And now, because of the resources we have, I think most things that we need, we could probably find because we've had so many generous donors who have come to us.
What are your biggest, if people were going to donate, what would you say your biggest need is?
Alejandro, what did you say?
I would probably say more like things for like the kids, because I guess we do have like coloring books, like my sister said and stuff. But it kind of also feels like we can give them a little more, like a little toy or something would be really nice. But I would also say things just like bread and like meat, because sometimes we do run low. Like on a Saturday when we're down here, we're like, oh, we like running out on meat and stuff. So it would be nice to get more donations with like food-wise with things for children.
What about like clothes and winter clothes and
Yeah, we've been pretty good with winter clothes. I think one of the things we really need, and then I guess we don't think of very much, is underwear. People are constantly asking us for underwear, and we never really thought of that. And I think sometimes guys or women are embarrassed to ask. Um, Sometimes feminine products, um, but undergarments, and a lot of what happens with the men and women downtown, which we didn't originally think of, is that because they're out in the cold and they're out in the rain and out in the snow, that once their stuff gets wet, there's no way to dry it out. So a lot of times we might give guys really good gloves or coats or sweatshirts because we get a lot of that at the beginning of the winter. And then once the snow hits or after a couple of weeks, their stuff gets dirty, they need all new stuff. And, most people would think, well, that's a waste. They've got this stuff already, but, they have nowhere to go and get this stuff washed. They have nowhere to go and get this stuff dried out. So we're constantly in need of being replenished with clothing. We made it through this winter so far pretty well. We still have some stuff left for the winter, but we're always in need of socks, underwear, things like that. Socks, underwear, gloves, and of course hand warmers. A lot of they're always looking for that because we could give them hand warmers and that'll offset some of the cold for a couple of hours, but then overnight and through the next day and stuff. There's just kind of an ongoing, constant need.
If somebody, do you look for volunteers to come out and help you as well?
Yes, we're pretty good because I have the girls who are great on the weekends, and sometimes they bring friends down. Their moms come down and helped us, and we sometimes have college students that one of the really beautiful things about the volunteer work is not just working with the people on the street, but the young people we get to know and the volunteers we get to know and the relationships we've established. So now these girls who I knew when they were 5 and 6 started coming out again a couple of years ago because I reconnected with them. And that's one of the most rewarding things about that because they're really kind and loving to the people on the street. The people on the street get to know us. So we're good pretty much on the weekends, but on Wednesdays, because the girls are in school, the college students I know are taking classes, we do have a need on Wednesdays, but it's pretty demanding. My wife and I head down here at 7 o'clock in the morning and usually don't get finished feeding people and cleaning up until around 2:30 and 3 in the afternoon. So it's kind of a demanding schedule. So Wednesdays are a little bit more difficult because again we're pushing this big cart. So yeah, we always need and welcome volunteers because it's one of the most enjoyable parts about this. So I would over the last year or two, we've probably had maybe 50, 75 different people help. Some of them are, every other week. Some of them are once a month. And, some of them come and help out when they can. Then we don't see them for a couple of months.
Right. I have to tell you, I've been doing this podcast for 7 years, and I've met a lot of really good people, a lot of exceptional people. But what you're doing, bar none, hands down, it's amazing. It really is. I'm sure these people on the street that are hungry or need some clothing, you have to be eternally grateful that there's somebody out there like yourself and your wife and these young kids. Look at these kids; they're young and they're out there doing God's work. So kudos to them. Girls, I'm really impressed with what you're doing.
So am I.
Thank
Very
you.
impressed.
Thank you, because just to be out there doing this and helping these homeless people, you could be out there doing a lot of other things, but you're out there doing the right thing. So God bless you and for what you're doing. I couldn't be any more proud of you than I am right now. It just warms my heart to see, Jeff, what you're doing for the homeless. I have a real, I'm a veteran. Kenny, my co-host, is also director of K9. He's a veteran. My biggest issue is having homeless veterans
Mhm.
that are doing without. That should be the last group of people that are on the street and going hungry.
Yeah.
That's a real pet peeve of mine. Our country shouldn't let that happen. So, but thanks to you and your crew, you're making a big difference.
Well, thanks. The
You're
veterans are
touching the lives of a lot of people that would be going hungry if it wasn't for you.
yeah, the veterans are I guess really kind of dear to my heart because I think they've obviously done something for our country that's oftentimes gone unnoticed, and then come back from the military with different issues, whether they're physical or emotional. And we've met a lot
Right.
of guys on the street who just kind of felt like they did their time and either were never really appreciated or taken care of, and have kind of slid into a lot of the people on the street actually and honestly have had drug problems, and they've resulted from maybe some difficult family situations that they were in when they were young, or maybe they came back from military service with a disability, whether it was seen or unseen. And I guess it's our way of thanking them and kind of letting them know that they deserve to be recognized and respected, just like anyone else on the street, whether they're a veteran or not. They're not all that much different than us. And I think in growing up, I would come downtown as a little kid or as a teenager, and maybe we were told to kind of look away if somebody had one leg or one arm, or if they were begging on the street. And I always kind of want to know more about them. So I think once I finally had the chance in my 20s and 30s to get to know some of these people and talk to them, they're not that much different than us. And I think a lot of people treat them as if they are, as if there's something wrong or some reason why we should stay away from them. But that could be any one of us.
Oh
And,
yeah, in a heartbeat.
yeah. So it's maybe we're just one or two mistakes away from where they are. And as
Right.
time goes
Could be
on,
us at any given time.
yeah, we get to know their stories, and a lot of them are wonderful people. Some of them I would consider friends because we see them from day to day, week to week, month to month. Several of them out here for years, and you just can't help but really hearing about them.
Jeff, with the homeless that you've met doing what you're doing, other than the immigrants that are here, the homeless people you met that aren't immigrants, what do you think the biggest reason, in your opinion, why they're homeless?
Um, I think they've probably made some poor decisions at some point and maybe got embarrassed and maybe burnt some relationships with their families and friends, and just kind of went in the wrong direction and then found themselves out on the street, or lost a job, maybe just with a factory shutting down or an agency closing. Some of them had been cleaning women and they just kind of lost their jobs and they were living check to check. So I think probably lack of stable family situations, and then maybe sliding into a bad situation and being out on the street for a week or two, and suddenly it's 6 months or a year, and they will say that I never thought this was going to be me. I've met people from my old high school. I've met people from our old community where I grew up in Burbank, and as I said before, they're just like us, and maybe they didn't have the stable education or the stable jobs that a lot of us and our loved ones had. But in a short time, it went from maybe a couple of mistakes or difficult family life to being homeless from a couple of weeks to a couple of months or a couple of years.
What about a mental health issue? How much do you attribute that to anybody being homeless?
Do you want to say anything about that, AJ? Mental health.
I think a lot of the people that we see on the street, some of them a lot of them do drugs or were in drugs, and that's probably because of their past life. Like they had issues growing up. Like we met this one guy. I guess he had problems with his brain when he was growing up, which caused him to miss a lot of school. And he was out on the streets for multiple years, and we saw him for multiple years. And now we haven't seen him in a year and a half. So I think that's a big part of what
Right. I agree. Jeff, I thought the city of Chicago and the mayor was so pro-immigrant that he was taking care of them all. That there shouldn't be anybody home. If you're an immigrant and you're in Chicago, it's a sanctuary city. Why isn't the mayor or the governor or the mayor of Chicago? Why isn't he doing out there God's work like you are?
You know, I'm really not a political person. I'm assuming.
No, and I'm not trying to get political.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying if they have such a stance on welcoming all these immigrants. So if they're welcoming them, why are they not taking care of them though? Why is it up to you and your team to be out there feeding them?
Well, I think what happened, because it felt like it happened really fast, that, you know, we were serving our sort of the homeless people that we had known for years, and suddenly there were 3 or 4 or 5 families on the street who were immigrants. I think the city got inundated all too fast. I don't think there was a real good plan. And as I said before, some of them had really good shelters and really good help, and a lot of them went to places that weren't ready for them, food wise or paperwork wise, or technically they just couldn't handle it. So I think the city just got overwhelmed and really couldn't handle the problem. And I think because there was a change of mayors from Lightfoot to Johnson, that I think that put things back. And then more and more the immigrants kept coming, and there was just no way to handle it properly. Plus, we had the homeless population that was already here. And actually, I think these guys and women the homeless people deserve a lot of credit, because when the people came from South America, the sort of old-time homeless people were really kind to them. They were not fighting them for space on the street. They might have internally resented it, but our homeless population, I at least had never heard that they were fighting with the new immigrants on the street. I think they felt sorry because a lot of them were women and kids. So it was just too much, too fast, and I don't know if anyone really knew what to do. So there's a lot of organizations trying to help, but just couldn't keep up.
You know, it's amazing what you're doing to help these people. You know, and I just feel that if they're welcoming these immigrants into our community, that they should be taking care of them. You shouldn't have to depend on yourself and your goodwill and these young ladies to be out there doing what the city should be doing for them. You can't keep welcoming more of them in to our city, and when you've got so many already that are homeless.
Yeah. Yeah, it just, you know, I think it became kind of a political football. And I think a lot of these people were let in without a plan. I'm not sure what the thinking was, but I think it wasn't thought through very well. And in many cases, I think they were sort of taken advantage, maybe because, I don't know why, because it looked good to say we were a sanctuary city, but when we were called on to do that, I think some good things were probably done. In a lot of other cases, it was just too much. So
What would you
we did see, yeah,
Kenny, you were going to say something?
yeah, we did see there was an effort during COVID to get a lot more housing for some of these people. So some of our guys and women, we did see finding housing from time to time, and you still see that. But I think there just wasn't enough space or management available to house the people who used to be on the street, and then to also try to house the
Well, I'm a little curious. You said that they closed down all these shelters and everything. Where are these people?
You know, I don't know.
I mean, it's awful cold out there, and I've been to Venezuela.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever gets cold there. It's pretty warm pretty much all year round. I know it's a little difficult for these people. I mean, this is Chicago, I understand, but with shelters closing, and I know we had a pretty big influx of people. Where are they?
You know, I don't really know. That was something because we're kind of busy feeding and trying to meet the needs of the ones on the street. We didn't pay a lot of attention to where they were being sent, or we would know these people pretty well and would be talking to them, and they were here for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then suddenly gone, and we didn't really know where they went. So I'm not sure, but yeah, it's amazing to wonder. As I said before, there was a men's shelter that had, I think, about 400 guys in it, and suddenly it was closed up and gone. So I have no idea where they went.
Jeff, if people wanted to help you financially, monetarily, how would they do that?
You know, we've never had that problem. That'd be a nice problem to have, because we sometimes get contributions of money from people who know us or have come to know us, mostly friends of ours.
How do you receive it?
It's mostly people who know us and just kind of hand us a check or hand us cash, and sometimes even people on the street. On a Wednesday or on a Saturday, we'll see what we're doing and say, well, we really admire what you're doing. So right now we don't have a set way of, of getting contributions like that other than people who know us personally. So that's something we could probably work on, but it's never.
Have you ever thought about starting a 501c3, which is a not-for-profit organization where people like Whole Foods, Jewel, they could donate to you for a tax deduction. And it's really a simple process. You start a Facebook page, you get it out there, you get what you're doing out there. I think people would really gravitate because it's such a great thing that you're doing. I mean, you're an amazing man, I got to tell you. And those two young ladies, I got to give them credit. Thank you for what you're doing for these homeless people.
Can I?
Yeah, they are great. I couldn't have done this without them, and because it's been the three of us on the weekends, and then my wife helping during the week, and kind of a small army of volunteers. And we did know, that we could start a 501c3, but I didn't think we ever thought we'd get this big, or that it would become that much of a commitment. So it was nice, kind of a small family project with a decent amount of volunteers. And
well, I think you exceeded that.
Yeah, So I didn't know if we ever wanted to become more official or more legitimate, because I didn't know if it was going to get to be that much of a big thing, or how long it was going to stay like that. So, excuse me, we just haven't made that decision yet.
Well, if you ever decide you want to do that, I would love to help you set it up. I can walk you right through it. It's a simple process.
Yeah, Mike, I think my response to that would be, if I was to tell my wife that, she'd say, "You mean we're going to keep doing this?" Because it's a lot of work. And I've told the girls, they're juniors in high school. One of the things that I'm helping them with is look for colleges. And I've kind of said the day they leave for college is when I stop doing that. I don't know if I'd actually do that, because I really love the people on the street. Andrea wants me to keep doing it. Ali wants me to keep doing it. But I don't know. I can't make any long-term commitments. So that's, I don't know.
Are the girls still in high school? Or what are you, juniors, seniors?
We're juniors in high school.
What's that, Ken?
I just wanted, they're juniors in high school. I was just curious what grade they were in.
Yeah, they're juniors in high school, and help out whenever they have a day off school. I kind of call on them to come down and help out. They come down in a minute. At times, I will come down on a Saturday, and they'll already have all the sandwiches and lunches packed for me. They've brought a lot of their own toys from when they were little kids. They've gotten clothing, so they've been really great. So yeah, I don't know if I could ever really replace them. And I guess I don't have to worry about that for another year and a half.
Jeff, is Lisa with you?
Pardon me?
Is Lisa with you?
Oh, not right now. No.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, bring her on screen, because she's a big part of what you're doing.
Oh, she's huge. She's kind of the one who keeps this going and never wants any credit for it. But like I said, on Wednesdays, when maybe a volunteer will cancel or the girls are in school, she's kind of doing
Michael Stefancic is my brother-in-law. He's married to my sister. He brags about you and your family and what you're doing all the time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
He's really proud of what you're doing.
Lisa was a great mom, and I just kind of slowly pull her into everything I'm doing. And I think without her knowing it, all of a sudden she's kind of overwhelmed with a lot of work, but really willing to do it and really great on the street with the people too. When the girls weren't here and all the immigrants were on the street, we had to kind of start learning a little bit of Spanish so we could talk to the families. So Lisa was really great at that. And now with the men, and as I said before, we've established now some of these guys have gotten housing, and we're kind of considering maybe getting boxes for them, like to kind of establish their apartments for them, because a lot of times they get apartments with almost nothing in them. So they have an apartment and a place to stay warm, but don't have soap and shampoo and stuff like that. So Lisa's kind of constantly going through donations we've gotten and trying to get guys stuff that we can as much as we can. And we also try to spend a little bit more time with each of the people on the street, because we can't just feed them. We have to care about them and get to know them.
Right, exactly. It's the whole package.
Yeah, yeah.
Jeff, I want to thank you and these two young ladies that are just amazing for being my guest tonight on my podcast. I think what you're doing is amazing. There should be more people out there like you doing what you're doing to help the unfortunate, disfortunate, and the homeless. So I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. It really is. Like I said, I do a lot of podcasts, but this one it just hits a special spot in my heart, because you're not doing this for any other reason other than to help the homeless.
Yeah, well, Mike, and I think I'd like to have the girls comment too, that I think God puts people in our way and puts people in our path. And we can't just walk by them and pretend they're not there, because they're there for a reason. And that, as I said, that could be my brother, that could be my cousin, someday that could be me.
Could be us.
If God puts them in front of us, we have to do something about it. We have to serve them,
Right.
because we just had someone paint on the side of our cart that none of us are okay until we're all okay. And we really believe that we're only doing as well as the least fortunate of the people in our midst, whether
Right.
it's a friend or a family member or someone on the street. So if there's people sleeping on the street all night while I'm sleeping at home and have a refrigerator full of food, I think we're obligated to share ourselves and to share our kindness and our love with them.
Jeff, you're a good guy. I'm so happy to know you and to know what you're doing to help these people out there. I mean, you're changing their life. You really are. You're giving them something to look forward to. So God bless you. And again, to those two young ladies and your wife, thank you for what you continue to do to help these homeless people. God bless you.
Thanks. Alejandro, do you want to add anything?
No, I think just like feeding the homeless is like, I think the part that I love the most is always just seeing little kids. Like, even though it sucks, like the conditions in which they're living, I think just seeing their joy whenever they got food or even a coloring book with crayons, and like just seeing them like run up or hug or just say thank you, it just like warms your heart to know that like not only like even though like what you do is hard and it's like very demanding, it's also very rewarding. Just like not only the relationships you build with like people like Mr. Jeff, but also people on the street, like with children and stuff. Like we've gotten to know so many women, men, children, and it's just beautiful.
Andrea, what do you want to add?
I think the biggest thing is not what we give to them, it's what they give to us. Like they give us hope, they give us inspiration to keep on doing what we're doing. Like I have a dream to one day take this globally, make this like there's so many other countries where there's homeless people who are being held, which we could easily do that. Like I have a dream to one day be able to take this to another country.
I think you will. You know what? Both of you girls are angels. You are angels. And I got a feeling I'm going to see you down the road somewhere in another country. You
Listen,
two are angels.
thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thank you.
Anything I could do for you personally or Canines for Veterans, it was a pleasure talking with you and the girls tonight. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. And I hope there's more people that come out to help support you in your endeavor. Really, God bless you.
Thanks. God
Thank
bless
you.
you. And if anything, just ask people to pray for the people on the street because prayer can accomplish more than we ever could. And
Prayer's a good thing.
we're all in this together.
Prayer's a good thing. Good night, guys, gals.
Take care,
Karen?
everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. God bless you.
It's been a really awesome